today, one of the things that I hope we will discuss this morning is, what do we mean by a place being investor friendly? What do we mean by saying a place or region or state is attractive? What do we mean by saying that the state is competitive? These are some of the things that will come out of our conversations this morning to show the things that one must continue to do in order to ensure that we are moving in the right direction. But all this has implications, and it has implications with respect to the civil service structure, the civil service functioning in the state. Because you see, if you don't have a civil service that represents the government and the governance of the state, working hand in hand with the private sector and making life easy for the private sector to thrive, then it will be failing. It is the civil service structure, it is the civil service system, it is the positive bureaucracy that we must face that's going to help us to engage with the private sector, encourage the private sector, give them the comfort that coming to this state is something that is going to be beneficial to them and give a good return on their investment. So on the other side of the coin, we are saying we want to invite investors, but we must behave in a way that accommodates them. That leads me to the fact that Ogun State miraculously, and I use the word miraculously, moved from a position of 36 in the Doing Business Index to 5. And that is a huge leap. And it's showing that, yes, it has become aware and is sensitive to those things that are essential for any investor coming into the state in meeting all their needs and making life a lot easier for them. And there's so many factors that you can look at that they've done very, very well in, and one really must congratulate them. In the midst of all this, we're saying, do we have the right ecosystem to support the state, to support investment? The World Economic Forum had said earlier on, when they do their global competitiveness ratings, which again is really relevant to us here in Nigeria. Don't forget that any point in time, Ogun State is competing with about 36 other states if we include the Federal Capital Territory. So there's an internal competition that is going on, and it is the ability to make yourself the most attractive state in the country that helps us to become the most or more attractive country in the global arena. So when you look at the ratings and the issues and the factors that the World Economic Forum looks at in order to assess whether a state or a country is attractive, we also have to continue to look at those things. And it has to do with the institutions in the state, the legal and judicial system, the law enforcement ability, the protection of investments by the law, having standards, level of compliance, property rights, and things of that nature. From an institutional point of view, we must have in place. The second thing is infrastructure, which we all talk about all the time. We say that we must have a drainage system, roads. We know there's a huge, ambitious plan to build a railway system from the state to attract and make transportation a lot easier. We have issues on power, telecoms, and so on. And of course, you've got the issues about the macro issues about taxation in the state. But probably more important, that which is more sustainable, has to do with issues about education, the quality of people. So if I'm coming in, do I get the right people that can work in my factories, the right people that I can engage? All these are matters that one must take into consideration in saying, is this the place to be? Now, statistically speaking, if you've got about 96 plus industries or institutions coming into the state, it is so clear that Ogun State must be doing the right thing. Now, having said all that, we have here with us here in the panel people or organizations that have been here for many years, those that are very recent, and clearly there must be something that has attracted them to the state. There must be something that has kept them to stay in the state. And there must be a lot more that is encouraging a lot of them to make additional investments, significant investments going into the future. There's no way any new investor will come into a place unless he sees that those that are already there are doing very well, are extremely satisfied, and will continue to expand in their activities. Now, having said all that and created that kind of a background, and I want to talk, and I'm going to start with Unilever right here beside me, as to what has guided you in the past. You've been around for a long time. What are the things that you find that's working well for you in the States? what the kind of advice you would eventually give to individuals or others that are investing, even what things must we get right? What more must the state do for you? And what proudly you can say are you doing for the state? So let's start off with you, and then we'll hope we can have a conversation about this afterwards.
Thank you very much for your question. It's a dangerous question, because if I'm not careful to answer that question fully, I could speak for 1 hour non-stop. So I'm going to try to just give bullet points so that there's space for others to contribute and that we can develop the conversation. And for that very reason, I would like to take it from a fairly high level, and then we will go into the details as we progress. I think one of the things that really distinguishes Ogun State, and my point of view, is that the competition that Ogun State has to go through is not just with the 36 states of Nigeria, because capital is today so mobile that it is a reality that while it is one of the states that make up the Federation of Nigeria, it is also competing for capital that could go anywhere else out of Nigeria, and it needs to see itself in the international plane. The reason I define the context that way is because I feel that Ogun State is setting a path as a thought leader when it comes to people-centered development and thinking about development in a very integrated way. There is a very strong overlap with Unilever's own Unilever Sustainable Living Plan, which believes very strongly that business must decouple growth from adverse environmental impacts. Now, particularly, I was here, I think, a week or two ago, and I saw the celebration of a green economy. If you're people who are thinking about the long-term development of a place, you feel very strongly that business has to play a role in tackling some of the deep problems that society is facing, and you see a state that is so far-reaching in its thought process like Ogun State, that has to be the main attraction point, because you are participating in building an ecosystem that will endure. And in the end, all businesses must be thinking about legacy in that sort of context. So for me, that is the most distinctive feature. There are specific attributes of competitiveness we can talk about, and we will obviously come to the hardware, which is the roads, the infrastructure that is being built, the fact that the middle class, the fact that we have a government in Ogun State that is accessible, that understands the investment climate, that understands also the way that the private sector works. But more important than that, it gives priority to the private sector, is that it gives priority to people. People are the center of Ogun State's development effort. And at the end of the day, those of us in the private sector understand that there is no way to build an enduring business model if we do not put people first and if communities do not thrive. And for me, that is the most distinguishing feature of Ogun State, one that I think is an example for many states, not just in Nigeria, but many communities elsewhere in Africa can borrow from.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Very, very, very well said. And I think I like that angle in the sense that, yes, we can all always look at the obvious, but there's a part of it that's saying that Ogun State is focusing on those issues that are extremely sustainable. And whilst we deal with the environment, which we talked about extensively yesterday, it's nice that we are bringing in the issue about people, being extremely people-focused, and I think that's a great one. Piju, again, any opening thoughts? Lafarge has been around for a while. You are extremely familiar with the state, long history, long history. What are your comments?
Thank you very much. I was recently at the Ogun State 40th year anniversary, and for a while I wondered who was the host, because indeed Lafarge in the form of WAPCO has been in the state for 59 years. It was established in 1959, and so I think we actually predated Ogun State, having been part of the Western region. And as my colleague from Unilever said, over the years, through civil administration, through military regimes, through successive changes of ownership of the then WAPCO, which is now Lafarge Africa PLC, we have continued to invest in Ogun State. We've invested in so many areas. From the obvious areas, we have 5 cement plants, we have 7 ready-mix plants, we have 1 aggregates quarry. On top of that, we're invested in power. We have 90 megawatts currently in Iwekoro. We're moving that to 310 megawatts by 2017. We have huge social investments. We estimate our social impact is in the region of 24 billion naira per annum. We have huge environmental investments, which is very much in line with the theme of this conference. We have huge investments in the community. And the question is, why do we continue to invest in Ogun State? As my colleague has said, I must say that I may be slightly biased because I'm a proud daughter of Ogun State, so I will try to remove that bias from this conversation. But I do believe that here we have one of the most investor-friendly and accessible governments in the country. I remember once I brought one of my CEOs to visit the governor, and he took us on a personally driven tour of Ogun State around all the sites, and we spent about an hour at an industrial waste site, standing right there in the landfill. And so I think the investor-friendly nature of the state draws very much from the leadership of the personal leadership of the governor. Of course, you can't invest in any state if there's no peace and security. By nature, cement companies are there for a long time. We tend to invest for 50 years, 100 years, and we have one of the most peaceful relationships in terms of community relationships in this state. And that gives us the confidence to keep on investing. There's very good security in the state. It's clear that we have very good transportation links. It's not for no reason that this state is called the gateway state. And of course, the state is very close to the biggest markets in Nigeria. So we have invested very much in Ogun State over the years. We continue to invest. And the area going forward, the areas of environmental investments, my colleagues yesterday spoke about what we're doing in terms of municipal waste and agroforestry. That's very important to us. Cement companies have become leaders in terms of waste to energy and waste to wealth. And Ogun State is right there at the forefront, pioneering this in Nigeria. And we also continue to invest in the state going forward in terms of affordable housing and mass housing. And we're working together in partnership to see how we can actually democratize and industrialize housing in Nigeria. And so there are many, many areas of collaboration with the state that we've invested in over the last 50 plus years, and we see that we'll continue to invest in over the next 50 years and centuries to come. So our experience in Ogun State has been extremely positive. We're looking at additional investment in terms of cement plants, in terms of ready-mix quarries, and very importantly, as was spoken about yesterday, we're also investing heavily in concrete roads, and we've just built a road in front of our plant in Iwekoro. So there are very, very many areas of collaboration with the state, not only in the past, that we continue to look forward to in the future.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. We find a lot of youthful exuberance coming into an organization that's very key. You and I were discussing before we started the session. Again, if we have investors sitting out there, what would be your own comments, your own experience that you will share?
For us, ours has been an investment more into the power sector type of business, which is where a supportive sector by making wire for the power sector, the distribution, or the transmission sector. Coleman Wires and Cable has been a brand for over 20 years. Actually started off in Lagos, then moved into Ogun State in 2009, and we moved virtually all our business. Now, moving the business from where you started from to a totally new location has a lot of dependency on certain things you're looking for. Ease of doing business, access to your business, the growth and the growth potential of actually the investment in that area, the potential of actually using what space you have and the long-term, the near-term and the long-term view of the area. I think for us, when we were looking at it, Ogun State was more, not only as my dear sister just said, that we're a bit biased, of course, we're also from the state. But taking the biasness out of it, the state is viable on the basis of business. If you look at the proximity to the port, you have less than an hour from the port. If you're looking at raw material accessibility, if there's no traffic, it's less than 30 minutes. Now, that gives you good access to raw material, gives you good access to opportunity of export also. Now, in putting the business here, when we started, I think it was a very good idea for us then, and I think it's still a good idea because we've invested more. Now, between the 7 years of being in Ogun State, 2009 to now, we've been able to expand from a business on just 15,000 square meters to, well, looking at over 100,000 square meters now. And that expansion is coupled on today that we went into the production of house wiring cable here, and later on went into the production of specialized cable for the oil industry. Later on went into the production of high voltage cable in Shagamu. And it indirectly put us on the map, but it put Ogun State also on the map as a viable state, because today we're the first state and the first country in West Africa to make high voltage. And we became only the 6th country in the continent to actually have a production plant. And that added a lot to the impetus on what we're trying to do on power. Now, we still see an investment opportunity here because we're also doing backward integration. And we're looking at additional infrastructure, additional expansion into smelting our copper here locally, smelting our aluminum here in the same Shagamu. And so you're looking at business opportunities on a larger scale in terms of investment capacity, in terms of people skills, in terms of people employment. And I have to give it to the government also that what I've seen in the last few years, especially in the last 5 years, the actual access to the government, access to their business thinking has improved a lot. It's more private-orientated push, and without private sector push between the public sector and the private sector, you cannot see sustainable growth in certain areas, especially industrialization. For me, I don't believe government should be in business. Business is for the private sector. Government is for overseeing the business. For us, it has worked well so far. And I think they can still do better because they're doing a lot now, but you can't satisfy everybody. Our wants are big, our needs might be very little. But we can still do a lot more in the state. For me, accessibility is improving from the federal government roadside, but we need to also look at accessibility off-road. From my own point of view, if I have to look at Ogun State, the biggest viability of Ogun State is land access. Now, we have land. We have access to the seaport. Now, everybody wants to come into Ogun State. I still had a meeting with someone that was looking for 25 acres yesterday, and there was a foreign investment. And I was encouraging him to go ahead with his Ogun State purchase of 25 acres because they want to put an industrial sector there. And one thing I told him that why he should endure, and he said, unfortunately, he's been on this negotiation for 3-4 years, and they've not concluded, only because of 2 acres in between the land that is on dispute. And I said, have you actually spoken to the government about it? Because these are disputes that the government will be interested in resolving, because this is 25 acres of industrial land you want to put into place. So we need to also encourage others to do it. But access, what I meant by access is, a good example is Lagos-Ibadan Express Road, which is majorly in Ogun State. Most of that road, everybody wants to be on the front of the road. Most industries I've met want to buy land on the road. Now, why are they all chasing the road access? Because it's easy access for their business, easy access to their business. Now, what I suggested was that why don't we take every 5 kilometers of this road and build a 10-kilometer access road? Now, you've given every 5 kilometers access to someone on the road, but now it's off the road. And then the land value also increases. The opportunity for land use collection also increases because everybody goes on that road again. And then we offshoot the roads again. So my focus is that we need easy access to the business, but we can also create more access to other businesses wanting to join us. Because the person that was talking about 25 acres was also on Lagos-Ibadan Express Road, on the road. Nobody wants to go off the road. So we need to look at How many off-roads can we create to attract additional investment that people that want to come into the road? That's my own addition to it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And clearly, bear in mind that part of the theme of this summit is transportation. Apart from the rails, there are plans for roads, and I'm sure and I hope the people responsible will bear that in mind, and the fact that it connects to that value chain we're all trying to create. Zadegunwa, I just want you to share with us again your thoughts on your experience so far in Ogun State.
We just came into Ogun State about 2 years now, and the first thing that I realized is that by virtue of location, Ogun State is actually strategically perfect, because you're just barely an hour from Lagos, and then to get to other parts of the country is much easier than you would have actually realized. And actually for us, to be able to get our products all through the country, Ogun State is actually extremely strategically located, which is absolutely perfect. Like everybody else has said as well, Ogun State is also home as well. So it's always good to be able to do charity begins at home. And a lot of what we're doing now with the factories we're putting up, there's a lot of developments coming such that what we're able to achieve is really impacting on the society. For example, when we did our first factory, we were able to have like 3,000 people engaged. And automatically within the Ijebu community, you immediately saw the impact within the society. It was quite fantastic to be able to have 3,000 people engaged in doing the construction of this establishment. So yeah, we're very excited about it. A lot is happening, a lot is on the pipeline that we're about to launch, and we really are quite happy with the Ogun State infrastructures.
Okay, well, thanks very much. Did you mention, because I can't hear you clearly, did you mention anything about the kind of things you're planning to do in the future?
Yes, we do have a new plan that we're doing right now. We intend to be in the market within the next 4 weeks. Okay. By virtue of the fact that it's a new plan, I don't really want to obviously talk too much about that. But yes, we are having quite a lot of plans coming up within the near future.
Okay, thank you. All right, John, Mr. Komentaros, who's the chairman of Flour Mills, another huge giant in the country and has been around for a while. And I kept you to just before last because of the size of what you're doing and the diversity in terms of the various things that you've been up to over the years, and certainly the kind of plans you have. So you and I had talked earlier on, but do share some of those thoughts with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Feluso. I did drive behind a Lafarge ready-mix truck for part of the way, and they drove very well. So delighted to be here. I think, Feluso, the first thing that stands out is that you've invited investors in the state to speak, and I think success breeds success. And I think the members of this panel here today really do show what investment in Ogun State has yielded. And all of us have been very successful in Ogun State, and all of us are looking to expand in Ogun State. And I think that is the best evidence of anyone can point to. Flour Mills has invested $35 billion in Agbara, in OPEC states, with the largest pasta plant in sub-Saharan Africa. We have also invested in Ososa, a cassava flour mill. We're looking to expand that into a cassava starch factory. And we're looking to see how we can develop cocoa and cashew processing points in the state for export, but not raw materials, finished and processed products. When I look for where I would like to invest, I look at three things. First, is there good security? Are the people safe? Second, is there gas or power there? Third, are there roads and infrastructure? And I think OPEC Estates is one great example of all three things. And we're looking to expand in Ososa and develop that as a gas point and a greater infrastructure point. Ogun State provides all of these, many of these aspects, and I think that's a very important factor for investors. I think Ogun State has one of the greatest opportunities because it is at the crossroads of agriculture and industry. And today, for Nigeria to go forward, we need to be feeding, growing, processing, and feeding ourselves. This is the most critical thing we need to be doing. And Ogun State is the best example of having agriculture and industry in the same cross-section. And there's an old saying that a factory without a farm is scrap metal, and a farm without a factory is a weed. So I think that there is a tremendous ability here to unite the agricultural and the industrial sector in a virtual cycle of productivity and growth. And I think this has to be encouraged by developing clusters where there's power, infrastructure, and security around agricultural zones that can feed the raw materials and provide that cycle, virtual cycle of growth and GDP.
If you again look at the theme, agriculture is very, very constant in all we talk about. And like I said, if I was to ever put forward a value proposition for Ogun State, it would be, integrating agriculture into an industrial process. The reason why I left Mr. Dada last is that he's with the National Association of Small-Scale Industries. And when you listen to what all the other majors are doing, and we talk a lot about value chains, and we're saying that the lifeline and the life of small-scale industries is to plug into these value chains and be part of that delivery process for the larger corporates. How are you finding that in Ogun State, in terms of opportunities, in terms of realities to date, and things that still need to be done?
Sometimes you need somebody outside to tell you how good or how big you have become. I've lived 17 years of my adult life in Abuja, and sometimes around 2011, 2012, I came across the Facebook page of the state governor, and I could see sincerity, passion in the way his programs were being elaborated. And I'm from Ogun State. I've been in Abuja for a long period of my life. I decided to just come down home. And immediately I came, I went around the state, saw different developments that I somehow never believed would have happened. And then I sort of decided to set up my business in Shagamu. All I could say is it's been so good. We've been welcomed as a group, as an association by the state government. What we observed, before I became the state chairman, I was actually the national treasurer of the association. And we had gone around the country, and if there will be a peer review mechanism, just comparing the state with other states, not trying to downplay what other states are doing, but I want to believe Ogun State comes first. And like I said, so far, so very good. We were welcomed with open arms, and I have to give you 3 instances of what happened that made me realize that, yeah, this is a state to be. There was a time the Commissioner for Commerce and Industry summoned all members of the organized private sector, the BMOs, that's ourselves, Ogusima, NASME, to come to the office, telling us that there was a particular petition written by an SME in one of the local governments, claiming that people were disturbing them for taxes that were not meant to be paid by them. And the governor got livid, minuted to the petition and told the state Commissioner for Commerce and Industry to look into it. The local government chairman, the chairman of that particular local government was summoned, and the issue was trashed out. And for me, one of the biggest problems SMEs have nationwide is the issue of multiple taxation. People just come, try one way or the other to. I set up business in Shagamu. The only time we had that problem, I threatened, maybe because I am the chairman of NASI in Ogun State, and the man just knew that he would be in trouble if he doesn't walk out of the office. So far, so good for SMEs in Ogun State. One thing again we've noticed is the influx of SMEs into the state. Before now, maybe 5, 6, 8 years ago, rent was as low as 80,000 for a bedroom, 2-bedroom flat. Right now, you can't get rent for anything less than 250, 300,000 for a bedroom or 2-bedroom flat. That shows, because I wouldn't have the data to prove the number of people that have actually moved into Ogun State by virtue of the development they've noticed in the state. Then again, we had an SME conference that the state government was party to, and SMEs came from far and near. We could sense that so many SMEs even came from Lagos State and some other neighboring states, asking how they could come into the state to set up businesses here. In NASI, we have adopted a 3-pronged focus, that is people, processes, and product. For us, in that order, for us, the people are extremely important. They are more important than the process, they are more important than the product. And we have we've engaged some strategies, the strategy of exposure, reorientation, the strategy of training, then lastly, motivation, in that order. And we could key into the government's focus on human capital development for people of Ogun State. That's why we had to adopt those strategies and focus. And again, it's been so good because we've had a series of support from the state government encouraging us in so many things that we're doing, maybe because it could be aligned with the objectives and the focus of the state government. I wouldn't, why do we focus on people and processes? Ogun State is active in the extractive industry, mines, solid minerals, and agriculture. And again, by virtue of its nearness to cities like Lagos, Ibadan, there's every tendency that there's going to be a sort of influx of people from those areas to become uptakers in those extractive industry, to become processors. I led a delegation of the association to California just in March, and we came to realize there was a very high demand for products in Nigeria. Let me say this while rounding up. Somebody ran to meet us to ask us, he said, look, you people have tiger nuts. I didn't know what tiger nuts was until I Googled it right in front of the person, and I found out that it was a particular nut that we eat in abundance in Nigeria. And the guy told us that, look, if you can get us a shipload of tiger nuts, we are ready to buy. But along the line, we came across another person that actually does his business, an American that does his business in the Republic of Benin. And then he told us the challenges in doing business in Nigeria. He told us that the issue is actually the way we process that. Yes, quite well. Our products are one of the best in the world. Our ginger, our palm produce, ginger nuts and what have you. But the problem is the processing and that if we could get the processing right, and that a lot of American business deal in fair trade, that means anywhere they are operating, they want to see the benefit accruing to the community that they are operating from, that it will be very easy for American businesses to come into Nigeria. And for us, we decided that for our members to become actual off-takers in the extractive industries, that's processors, before they are now shipped abroad for a more lucrative international market, we need to come back home. We need to refocus on our people. And in refocusing on our people, those are the micro, small, medium enterprise operators. We have engaged with the government. We've told the government all what we need to do, and the government is giving us all necessary support, which is second to none. Like I told you, I've been around the country as the national treasurer of the association, and what we are seeing in Ogun State is really, really, really second to none. And we can't just do anything but to thank God that we're in the state. We're in a state like this, from 35 to number 5 in the index of doing business in Nigeria. That is quite commendable. Ogun State is a virgin land. It's a virgin land for doing good business and for making good returns on investment.
Yes, and, if I'm trying to engage, and this is a question is really thrown out to the floor, and anybody can deal with it, and it's really latching on to one of the things you said. What can you do? I'll call you all you majors. What can you do in trying to hook yourself back to the value chain, and therefore SMEs and all the other small organizations, the youths? There was a lot of talk about and excitement about getting the youth involved, because it's their life, it's their generation that's coming on. What can you do to ensure that you plug in? You look at the quality of life in a state, it's how many people are employed, and are we employing the people that have got the energy, the innovation, and so on, to get things going? So this is for any one of you. What can you do? What are you doing? What should we do to get that engagement? Yes, John. Yeah.
If we want to build a 100,000-ton starch plant, we will need 400,000 tons of tubers. We will need about 40,000 farmers to do that. To shift our supply chain inward, that's a great logistical task. And here the state does play a wonderful role, because there's no one better than the state to help organize the farmers associations, to set the guidelines of interaction, facilitate this organization of 40,000 people in the supply chain. So I think the state has as the supply chain shifts inward, the state has a great role to play in helping organize the farmers into collectives and arrange the interactions between the industries that are going to take their product and support them to grow
for that type of initiative, do you work with government? Or it's something that you're just doing on your own?
We work with the state government, who in turn works with the Farmers Association to set up that interaction. And one other thing I would suggest for the states is that having a piece of land and holding it, and it does nothing, is not a good thing. It's better to give the land if that land is going to produce something very productive and is going to provide 100,000 jobs around. So I think the state also plays a great role in how land is allocated, and it's better to have a land that is productive than a land that's not used and is held for the future.
Yeah.
So I think the state has a great role to play. It plays a great role in activating the supply chain, the Farmers Association, as well as coordinating the use of land.
Yeah, they say the best thing for any farmer is to have literally an off-take agreement, whereby everything you produce it's got its destination. You were going to say something?
Yes, I would latch a little bit onto what he said, which is to say, if we design the business model itself to be inclusive, and we look at growth from that point of view, about how can growth from the get-go be inclusive, then the fundamental role of the private sector is really to develop growth and to develop markets by understanding and serving the people in the markets in which it plays. we should be wary of thinking about that we do business, and then when we finish, we think about how we contribute to society. I think the responsibility that we have is to define our business models in such a way that as we are actually doing business, the everyday business, we are improving the communities and improving the lives. I'll give you two examples from my own experience. We, of course, deal in bullion cubes. We have the brand called Knorr. Seeing that anemia is a big issue in Nigeria, we enriched our bullion cubes with iron so that the daily consumption of bullion cubes actually addresses some of the anemia problem. We don't do finish selling bullion cubes and we say, what can we contribute to anemia? Another example that I can give is our campaign on teaching people the right way to brush your teeth and when you brush your teeth. By doing that, you improve the oral health of the people of Nigeria and the people of Ogun State, because 75% of our manufacturing base is here. But also, if people brush their teeth in the right way, they have healthier lives, they consume much more as a result of the fact that they are more productive, and business therefore prospers. So when we talk about competitiveness, we should try to get away from the dichotomy of the private sector sitting somewhere, government sitting somewhere, and when the private sector finishes what it is doing, it contributes something which is the page 13 of its annual report, to a much more holistic and integrated model, where the very act of doing business is developing the value chains, developing communities, developing the farming and agricultural system. And I think that uniquely, that's where Ogun State is most differentiated, that this process is understood. Never have I met the governor and his team and had to spend a lot of time trying to explain why business is relevant for development. And that is the thing that Ogun State, in my view, has developed and almost become a thought leader in the context of Nigeria, that it must continue to embrace, that it sees the development effort as very integrated, it understands the roles of the various sectors. We as the private sector also know we can never be government. That's why we're called a sector, not the entire society. So we play within an ecosystem, and all of us come together to build a competitive ecosystem. What we could do as a private sector coming from a global context is that we also, and Ogun State does that, I know when they speak about the Ogun Standard, I know definitely that the governor is not happy to be number 5 only within the context of Nigeria. There's absolutely no reason why Ogun State must not embrace world-class standards in what it does. There's absolutely no reason. It is a state that legitimately can have the ambition to play at world-class standards in certain selected sectors, and that's what it must do. When I was here 2 weeks ago, I was much earlier for my appointment than I had been given 9 o'clock, not knowing what the traffic was. I came much, much earlier. So I decided to tour Ogun State, ended up in parts of Abeokuta that I had never been to. And what struck me is that if you look at the development model and the trajectory that it is going at, very much global values are being embraced. And that's how it must look at itself. So don't be too happy if you become the number 4 in Nigeria. The question I will ask is, why can Ogun State not become the model state in West Africa, and then in Africa and globally? That's Ogun State has the potential, and that's the way it must be.
Thank you very much. As we wrap up, and I'll start with you, and we'll wrap up as well. What I just want us to do is, whilst we give all these well-deserved accolades, the question I want to ask is, what more can be done? What more should be done? So that at least we know it's not a perfect situation, but certainly we're nearly there. And your own advice to the government of Ogun State in terms of the few more steps that we must take whilst you answer the question. Thank you. Now I'll start with Pedro. And then I'll go to the end, and then we'll walk our way down here. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. A lot has been said about what makes Ogun State a very conducive environment. I think the theme of this conference is also taking us in the right direction, and I want to start with the issue of the environment. And we said, how can we ensure that the wealth creation and wealth generation in the state is inclusive? There are many initiatives, such as, for example, the various waste to wealth initiatives. Cement plants are by nature huge consumers of energy. And we said that Ogun State is a natural confluence of both the agricultural industry and industries and contributing to industrialization. Biomass, in other words, agricultural residues which are normally wasted and thrown away, can be collected by these smallholders and used to feed other industries for energy and ultimately for power. The same thing with municipal waste, the same thing with industrial waste. So I think one thing the government can do is put regulations in place to enable the collection of these various waste streams, and we can actually use that to empower and enrich the state. So the first is looking at how we can generate more wealth from waste to energy. The second I would say is in terms of tourism. Many of you may not know this, but Lafarge has 2 excellent golf courses in Iwekuru and Shagamu. And people come from all over the country to play golf at these golf courses. We can continue to develop the hospitality industry, given that Ogun State is so close to Lagos State and Ibadan. And in fact, many people from those states come to Ogun State at the weekend. So I think the area of tourism is another big area in which we can continue to see improvement. The third, of course, which has been mentioned, is continuing to ensure that we reduce all levels of multiple taxation. And we continue to make this a very investor-friendly state. I must say that Lafarge is very impressed with the close collaboration with the government, and as has been already illustrated by this forum, we're very willing to be ambassadors for Ogun State, not only in this country, but also internationally. We're invested in many states in Nigeria. We operate all over the country. And we have to say that Ogun State is very progressive in terms of thinking and in terms of creating a very business-like environment. So Lafarge is very, very amenable to being an ambassador for Ogun State, not just in this country, but also outside the country.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So in wrapping up, what more can be done? And then we'll just move all the way down here.
For a business to actually grow within any community, you actually need to actually try and see how you can reduce capital costs. Now, capital cost in Nigeria is high because certain costs are added that's not really supposed to be part of the cost, which is infrastructural costs. Power, road, water, those are infrastructural costs. They're normally not a standard investment cost. Now, how do we encourage people to want to invest? Those 3 need to be watered down, or the costs need to be watered down. And that means either I cluster power, and that is all being said now, especially in government. Now, but I think the difference there is that Ogun State is the biggest industrial zone and has the potential to be the #1 in not only Nigeria, in West Africa and the rest. But to do that, it also needs to break the barriers of these power infrastructure issues. Now, my own suggestion is, I'm happy to hear Lafarge has going to 300 plus. I'm happy to hear Flour Mills has. Now, the guarantee I can tell you for a fact, and they would admit to me, majority of them are not using the full power at any point in time. Now, that means they've got excess capacity. Now, what do I do with some excess capacity? I can sell the excess capacity. I can use it as a cluster around me to create more businesses that use that power. Now, we need to move away from and decentralize this power use. If I am next door to you, I don't have to invest in the same power that you have. I can share the power. Now, the problem we're having is the regulations in that area are so tough on the federal side that the state needs to break it down. Because I did know even Ogun State tried doing its own distribution. But it's so difficult. We're moving from monopolies of government to private sector monopoly, and then regulating private sector monopoly. It doesn't work. Now, you need to deregulate, which we have. Then our state needs to make sure that this power can be shared. So if I've got 10 megawatts and I'm actually only using 5 megawatts, and the next 2-3 industries need just 2 megawatts, let them be able to come to the guy with the excess power to utilize, rather than invest again in additional power loss. You have environmental effect of all this. So you can break down infrastructural costs by sharing those key major investment costs with clusters. It makes it cheaper. So I can go from a 10 billion investment, that 2 billion of that is power, to 8 billion investment or 500 million additional cluster. You've broken down the cost.
Yeah.
So it's about, investment is not only about entertaining people or bringing them in, it's also trying to bring down the cost of entry, the cost of startup. Even for the SME, they might only need 500 kV.
Yeah,
but because you've got this cluster,
so I hear you, there.
You can
And
sell it to the others.
Thank you so much. And that's a brilliant one in terms of trying to see some shared services which the government can actually drive. And I think that's an interesting point. Zadigunwa, and then John. Yes. We've got to keep it short because the compare the MC is looking at me from the corner there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's, the main areas have already been touched upon. For us, really what I'd ask for more is a gas pipeline, because currently right now we don't have a gas pipeline, so the cost of energy is high. You have to have compressed gas, and naturally you'll understand that's expensive. So the assistance we would appreciate is if we can have some sort of assistance to get a gas pipeline put in the Jabu-Osasa access. That would be excellent, Your Excellency. Thank you.
Okay, John, yeah.
Well, I think that following the previous two comments, I mean, gas would be excellent, and working in clusters, I think, is a very important thing. We must focus on things. We have a lot of homegrown industries that are here. We should be asking Unilever what could be made in Ogun State that's being imported. We should be asking flour mills the same thing. What businesses can we build around the businesses that exist and use those clusters to develop further things? Because there's a lot of economic growth and activity that can be, you have to build it around spheres. And I think we have very good infrastructure. So there's a lot of focus and seeing what we can do to grow more. And perhaps some metrics for the state government people. How many jobs have we created? What's our GDP growth through investment? A lot of metrics to really drive job creation and GDP growth.
Thank you. Mr. Dada.
As chairman of the Nigerian Association of Small-Scale Industrialists, we are more focused on the value chain creation and sustenance for the benefit of our members, because we believe that is where we find most of our members operating. Both that's when we're talking to majors like this, both forward and backward. And in doing that, we have decided to go the way of capacity building and skill acquisition for our members. Why do we have to do that? We need to boost their knowledge of global trends and adapt for them to adopt global trends, not just because we want them to operate in the international market, to gain access into the international market. Getting our members to adopt those global trends in production, in manufacturing, even in retail and wholesales matters a lot to us. And that is where we call on the government and even on the majors to come in to help see how we can introduce capacity development programs, skill acquisition programs for our members, especially in Ogun State. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I tend to look at logistics in three chunks: the logistics of inputs, logistics of consumption, and the logistics of disposal. Now, I think the inputs and consumption bit, we have tended to focus on a lot as business. The logistics of disposal in Nigeria needs more work. And you see the environment and you can tell. We all grew up thinking about the concept of you throw something away. I think as adults, we now realize there is no away. So you have to think very carefully and deliberately about how you protect the environment from all the commercial input that comes from manufacturing, etc. Last year, in 2015, for the very first time in our history, we had zero waste to landfill. We cut our water consumption by 7%, cut our energy consumption by 10%. I think that what we can do, not just as Unilever, but the state can help in this, is more collaborative discussion with the private sector about what are we going to do around the logistics of disposal, not just so that we can get more profitable because we're using less energy and less water and less materials, but so that we also protect the physical environment in which people have to operate and people have to live. And I think there's an opportunity. If we are collaborative, we do it in the right context, a mixture of our own responsibility as private sector, the right legislation and right incentive, we should be able to deal with this. When we started and said zero waste to landfill, it seemed impossible. There were challenges, there were things that we learned, but we learned major things. And now globally as Unilever, we've made a big commitment which says that by 2020, using 2010 as our base, we would have halved our environmental impact. So significantly decoupling growth from environmental impacts. I think that is an area that Ogun State can, because you're already on that trajectory, pick and drive even further to differentiate itself. And that's the extra bit that I would add to the agenda.
Thank you very, very much. We'll give the team a round of applause. We've touched on a whole bunch of stuff. I've got words that I've circled here: sustainability, an enduring business model, having global values, integrating business with life itself. A lot of the companies here have got a long history, focusing on green philosophy. You talked about tourism, which is interesting. The government is friendly, is accessible. The governor himself is accessible. There's a very customer relationship management focus of the state. There's peace, there's security. There seems to be sincerity of actions. There's unity of purpose. There's a strong value chain creation that's happening. A lot of emphasis on transportation. Progress is being made in the state. Yes, we need to deal with power and look at a sharing model. The same thing about providing gas to drive power. Skill acquisition is so key, capacity building. And then environmental sensitivity and discussing and working with government and so many, many more things. Ladies and gentlemen, do help me to thank all members of our panel, Mr. Sarkov, Mr. Dada, Mrs. Adebajo, John Kumantaros, Mr. Adigunwa, and Mr. Onofookon. Thank you very much.